how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 186. I sat down here in LA with Sean Fitzharris. Sean has bipolar disorder. It's a mood disorder that's coupled with schizophrenia, also a mood disorder. And he shares with me and all of you his descent into a very intense time of his life in his mid-20s when he discovered that his brain does not work exactly the way he'd like it to. It's an incredible story. What I love about Sean is that he is very open and honest about what he has had to deal with and about his brain and fighting his brain and going along on a wild and rambunctious ride with his brain and getting to the other side, finding the right medication and getting to a space really without shame. And I love that because there's so much stigma around mental illness. And he is just, this is who I am, and this is what I went through, and this is my story. And I think that's wonderful. And I really appreciate that he shared it with me and with us. I wanted to put a couple things out here. The NAMI.org, they might pronounce it NAMI, but it's NAMI.org. And that stands for the National Alliance of Mental Illness. It's got a ton of resources. And of course, I'll put that on the links page. In the UK, there is timetochange.org. And it's actually time-to-change.org. So there's little dashes in there. And then the USA, there's another really great resource, which is Social Work License Map. That's a good way to find help if you or someone you know might be struggling with mental illness. If you need resources on, maybe somebody in your life is dealing with this, and so you're dealing with this. Whatever it is, these are really great websites, and they all have so much information. So please do check that out at heyhumanpodcast.com on the links page. And the usual stuff, of course, social media. Hey Human Podcast is on Facebook and on Instagram. My personal social media is Susan Ruthism. That's on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And my personal website is susanruth.com. Email me, susan@heyhumanpodcast.com. Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes. And I am no longer in the Amazon Affiliates program. So if you wish to help support Hey Human, please do so with the donate button on the heyhumanpodcast.com website, where, once again, don't forget, there is a very complete links page with information from every episode. And I do hope you check that out because I curate that with loving care. So please check that out if you get the chance. I guess that's about it. So here we go. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hi, Sean.
Hi.
Welcome to Hey Human.
Excited to be here.
I'm so glad. I'm excited to have you here.
Your hat says Body Mass Index.
It's BMI. It actually stands for Broadcast Music Incorporated. I don't really know what the I stands for. That's my PRO organization. But, yeah, a songwriter in Key West gave me this hat. He was very drunk, and he probably regretted it the next day. But I couldn't remember his name to save my life to be like, are you sure you want to give me this super cool hat?
It's probably his initials, like Bob Maurice.
Yeah.
I don't want to give this hat away.
Yeah, his last name was actually, I don't want to give this hat away. Anywho, good to have you here. We met at an art gallery, of all places.
Yeah, we did.
Val Kilmer's.
Val Kilmer's art gallery.
Yeah, Hellmel
Studios. One of the first times I was there was for another art show, and my buddy Jose works with them, and we're out in the parking lot. I see him walk past with this big old oar, like this wooden oar. I was like,
you saw Val do that?
No, my friend who's working for him, and I'm like, why are you carrying an oar in the middle of LA? It's like, oh, well, this is a piece that just sold for like $1,500 or probably more than that. I was like, whoa.
Did Val do something to it?
Yeah, he painted some words on it.
Oh, okay.
But I mean,
art is art.
Art is art, right?
Really
especially
all you can say.
Art is however much you can get paid for it, right?
Yeah. I enjoyed that. That opening though, Val was very gracious and nice when I met him, and he was being introduced to a million people. I'm sure his brain was exploding.
He's probably like always on and that.
Oh, I'm sure. And then I met John, the guy that played Laszlo in Real Genius, and he also played Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite. So he was there.
Oh wow, that's
and he
Uncle
was
Rico.
So
okay,
sweet.
he's not the kung fu guy. He's Napoleon's older brother.
No, that's correct. He's his uncle, Uncle Rico. Remember who he said, I'm going to make. He's like, what'd you do today, losers? I made $150 or whatever he said.
I'm thinking of Kip, yeah.
Yeah. No, not Kip.
Not
Uncle
Kip.
Rico.
Uncle Rico.
With the mustache.
Yeah, I remember now.
Swoopy hair. Yeah. Anyway, he was there and was
funny.
So very nice. And anyway, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So we got to talking and ended up going to dinner, and you started telling me your life a bit.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's a lot of great story for a person, and would you be willing to share it? And you said yes, so thank you for that. So here we are.
Yeah,
in real time. Now that everyone's caught up. So let's go back to, you're from New York?
No, I grew up in Vermont, New Hampshire. Those two.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember you said that now. This is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you had an older father.
Yes. Okay, so we'll start with my dad, my dad died when I was 7. He was also in his mid-70s. But I only bring that up because his story is fascinating. He was a German Jew that survived the Holocaust. He grew up in this town called Ichenhausen in Germany, and World War II came, and basically his whole family were rounded up, and he went to one concentration camp, and they went to another, or maybe a few, and he basically never saw them again. He linked up with his brother Fritz years later, who also happened to survive. But yeah, basically that was his tragedy. His camp got liberated by U.S. forces. He was like skin and bones, obviously.
Your father was?
Yeah. Immigrated to the States. Got a job, was working, saved up a whole bunch of money to get the rest of his family out. Of course, at the time, there were all sorts of hucksters and scammers say, "Oh, we'll get your family out if you give us, so." He ended up losing a lot of money to some scammers, thinking he might get his family back. But I think his mother and his sister, he was had located them. But anyway, after that, he joined the U.S. military, went back overseas, fighting in Germany.
Wow, that must have been bizarre.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. That generation, I guess everyone else's like grandparents, they had to deal with a lot. And, since he knew German, he worked kind of intelligence, mostly interrogation. What would happen is he captured Nazis in his troop. They'd put him in his back room, and he'd go in, and since he knew German, he'd scare them all up, like say all the awful things they were going to do, and then they'd interrogate them. So that was kind of cool. And then later on, out of the war, he's back in New York doing whatnot. I'm not sure if this was his job the entire time, but when I knew him, he ran a magnet factory.
Magnet as in?
Magnets that stick together. And,
sure.
Yeah.
Unless you flip them, and then they repel.
Yeah, exactly.
Science, kids.
You might say they're bipolar. Foreshadowing.
I like it.
Yeah.
You can't write this stuff. Okay.
Anyway, so he's back in New York, and he he marries and has kids. Nice Jewish girl in New York. Cut to however many years later. Side note. While working in New York, my dad had a secretary whose name was Irma, which was my mom's mom. So that's initially how my mom and my father met.
And he was married at the time.
He was married at the time.
Dog.
Yeah. So how my mom does it? Well, yeah, dog. Right?
Dog.
Well, what happened was,
oh goodness.
Oh, they kind of started. My mom and my father kind of started hooking up. When she was young in her teens, and then
whoa,
yeah.
Holy moly.
Well, I mean,
the plot thickens.
He's the old school generation,
right? And what year was your father born? Just to get a context of.
See, that I don't know. It
had to have been 20s, right, or something. If he was in the concentration camps. Well, it depends on how old he was. No, maybe 30s.
He was in his mid to late 60s. When he had me in 1990, so
okay.
However,
we can do that's the 30s.
Yeah, there you go.
We can do the math.
However that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure how old he was when he was taken by the Nazis, so that makes more sense.
There's a bit I might have missed. They let him out of the camp to work his farm because the Germans needed food.
Yeah, they did that with several people they deemed valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
But they still had to
report back to camp.
Exactly.
Curfew.
Yeah. Curfew in hell.
So they initially met when she was young, and I don't know, she didn't take him seriously at that time, obviously, but then she goes away off to Austria. My mom's also very incredible and smart.
She's a doctor?
She's a doctor. She actually studied medicine in Austria while simultaneously learning German to speak.
She's a slacker, in other words.
She's a slacker. Well, she went there. She followed... weird enough, she followed this other very, very old German guy. Well, he was Austrian technically, but he was a concert cellist. Oh. So, and he taught her to play chess and all that. So she's going to medical school.
Your mom likes older men, in other words.
It's her thing. Yeah, I have no idea.
Everybody's got a thing.
But anyway, so his name was Stefan. I never knew Stefan, but what happened was he died of being old. So
that will kill you.
Yeah, exactly. So mom comes back to the States, and obviously, and then she sees Sam again. So that's my dad's name, Sam. So obviously he reminded her of Stefan being old and speaking German, and so they started hooking up.
And were you born in or out of wedlock?
Out of wedlock, yeah. My dad never got divorced from his original family.
Okay. So you have half siblings?
I do. I have half siblings that are my mom's age.
Have you met them?
No, I've met my niece. I've met my niece who's 3 years older than me. Yeah. But that's all.
Back to the Future.
That's all of that family that I've met.
Okay.
Because obviously they weren't very into accepting me into the family.
Were you close with your father before he passed away?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, my father by this time his kids were grown and out of the house, and I don't know. To hear my mom say it, my dad liked women, to say the least. So I don't know how many side chicks he had before my mom.
Or side siblings you have.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe.
All I'm saying is, before you get married someday, get a blood test to make sure you're not related. The old school way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll remember that.
Yeah, you just never know.
You just never know. Actually, well, I think biologically obviously you're not attracted to your siblings.
They say that people that you are
directly related to
have a weird smell. you. Their pheromone turns you off or whatever.
That's what I heard, yeah.
But in some cases, I've read stories of things happening, so, you know.
Yeah, I got a deviated septum, so I better watch out.
You better watch out.
So, yeah, they had me, and it was contentious, I guess.
But you spent time with him.
Yeah, well, my father and his wife, by that time, nothing was like secret, basically. There were even instances where my mom had, I don't know why the hell he would do this, but there were some instances where my mother would be over at like a family gathering with my father, like with his family.
Well, maybe they were all open.
No, they weren't.
Okay, maybe
not. No,
all right.
They hated her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting.
I don't know. I got to get the specifics on that. But basically, it was an open secret.
Uh-huh.
And Sam wasn't living with his family. Actually, after I was born, or maybe before even, he had his family home in New York, and then he also rented a place in Vermont where we were based.
Was Sam wealthy in order to juggle women and families and things, or just a regular guy with a...
I mean, you know, back then you could have two families being middle class, so...
That's a good point.
I guess compared to us, he was wealthy. So, yeah, and then he died, and...
Do you have a memory of that, really?
Not if I wasn't there. I don't remember really anything. I remember odd snippets, like I remember the whole layout of his apartment. I could tell you where to go and what it looked like. And I remember I have like specific memories, like snippets really. I know that our thing was peaches. He loved peaches, and whenever I'd go to this house, he'd give me a peach. And I remember being at home with my mom in our place, and she'd buy some peaches, and she goes, Sean, she goes, Sean, you never eat any peaches. I'm buying you peaches. And I'm like, I don't like peaches. Like, what do you mean you don't like peaches? I only take the peaches because Dad gives me the peaches. I'm just like, oh, I guess I never had the heart to tell him that I wasn't that fond of them.
Oh, that's sweet.
I mean, peaches are good, but when they're not ripe, they taste terrible.
Sure.
And another one is, I remember this old German made-up thing he told me. When I was little, I had this phobia about cutting my nails. Not phobia, I just didn't like to. I didn't like how they felt after they cut, you know. So to get me to cut my nails, he tried telling me, you know, Sean, let me tell you a story. I'm just going to do my Arnold impression when I...
Oh my God, your father was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not exactly a surprise to anyone.
Funny enough, a 6 degrees of separation, my mom's first, you know, old dude, Stefan, his brother was Arnold Schwarzenegger's tailor.
Wow. Because
he was so huge, he had to have his clothes. Yeah.
It's a small world after all.
Yeah, right. That's funny.
So your phobia, your dad.
Oh yeah, so he's like, Sean, there once was a little German boy who didn't like to cut his nails like you. And he let them grow and grow and grow, and they were so long, and then finally his parents were like, you gotta cut your nails, but they were so long that they had to go to the doctors to do it. And so the doctor took out these huge scissors, but the little boy's nails were so long, he couldn't tell the difference between the nail and the finger, and he chopped all his fingers off. And that was supposed to get me to cut my nails. Yeah, he was...
German parenting
he was
right there.
The best.
That's like a grim fairy tale.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of my favorite.
Wow. Okay, so you grew up mostly without dad. Did your mom marry again?
Yeah, well, my mom and dad weren't together.
Oh, right, they weren't married.
Weren't together long after I was born.
Oh, okay.
Well, how my mom she was kind of naive at the time, so she admits, and she thought that once I was born, he would legit get a divorce and remarry. Of course, that's not going to happen.
How old was she when you were born?
Late 30s. So, I mean, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. In her 30s. Because, in her 30s. So, she started dating my adoptive father soon before my dad died. So he'd like drop me off to visit him, and so they didn't know each other obviously, but they'd met.
Your stepdad and your father.
Yeah. And then Dad died, and then Mom.
Did he die of a heart attack or something? Or?
They don't know. There was something wrong with him that they really.
Probably all that malnourishment growing, when it's some pretty prime time of his life.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. And then from there life was normal. Well, yeah. Relatively normal, but I had the mommy and the dad. I didn't like, you know how it is with stepkids, like dad isn't dad. You're not my real dad.
Sure.
But
when did you leave home? 18-ish or?
Yeah. After high school, I moved to Staten Island, went to Wagner College.
What'd you study?
Well, here's the thing. I studied theater performance, but before me and my mom argued a lot. I was like, Mom, I don't need to go to the college. I'm going to spend all this money for a useless degree. But she was Mom, and she was like, at the time, it was thought that having a degree would get you ahead.
How old are you?
18.
Yeah.
No,
how old are you now?
Oh, I'm 29 now. Yeah. So, yeah, we argued, and then I went to school, lived on Staten Island there, and then moved to Brooklyn after I graduated.
Brooklyn! Represent!
Yeah.
I have some friends in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm one of the gentrifiers. Even being one of the gentrifiers in the 5-6 years that I lived in Brooklyn, it was absolutely noticeable, the amount of white people. When I first moved in, it'd be a few here and there, and then as the years went on, which is, I mean, there's good and bad things about it, and people love it and hate it. It's just one of those things that's happening that we kind of have to deal with, which is interesting.
Well, we get to deal with it because we're white, but people that have been pushed out, I don't think it's.
Yeah, it's harder. I
don't think it's real party for them.
Very hard to deal with. Yeah, absolutely.
And now we have gentrification, not only with race but also economics.
Yeah.
So, affordable housing is no longer a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a new kind of gentrification, in my humble opinion. Okay, you're in Brooklyn, and you're living your life. How old are you? Like 20s?
Oh, yeah. When
something's starting to kind of bubble up, or? Exactly.
Do
you remember any of the warning signs, or what we're about to get to? Everyone's like, ooh, what is it? What is it?
Yeah. It's funny that you imagine them listening in, which they are, but no one's here, and you have editing to do before they actually.
I don't really do much editing.
That's good. When someone says something really problematic, do you edit it?
No, not at all. I've had some problematic people on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's more, the editing is more for if there's a big loud plane overhead, or if somebody has a coughing fit in the middle.
Exactly.
But other than that, no. There's one episode that I had that I have made unavailable right now because it was a friend of mine, John. He was in an affair with a teacher when he was a kid. It's our
word.
Teacher, and it's now in litigation. They're going to trial and stuff. And
so just now for it.
Yeah, so the lawyers are you have to kind of meet. So I muted that episode.
Yeah.
While the trial is going to be happening.
Oh wow.
So that's. I mean, that's about it. But other than that, I don't. I want people just to be who they are, and if I start messing with that, then it's not really what the show is about. Sort of loses its thing.
You're right. Yeah. It's not like you're on a major network either. You can.
Nobody gets to tell me what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, back to you, and now back to you.
Yeah. So, yeah, the end of winter 2014, as a lot of people, I was like getting down with the seasonal depression, especially in New England, and well, not New England, New York, New England, where it's really cold. And I was just really, really, well, the usual amount of down, maybe particularly. And I smoked. I was like, I gotta feel better. So I smoked a ton of weed, and I was a real lightweight with weed at the time. I only
at the time.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah, I only started smoking in college, and I'd like take one puff and I'd be gone. So I had like a whole joint or something, and so I was gone, and I was like, I'm really sad. And deep in my mind, it felt like a literal light switch. I thought to myself, Sean, that's enough. From now on, you just have to be happy. And I was like, you know what, Sean? You're right. Click. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like, wow, that worked. I'm pretty stoked right now. And, you know, being in a better mood just lifts everything. I started exercising again, started looking for jobs, looking for auditions,
and you were beginning your manic phase.
Getting back on track. No, not even. So it starts out just with the change. I was like, oh, I'm happy now. And then it's basically exponential growth. So for the first however many months, so through the entire summer, it was like I was on some kind of new antidepressant or something, probably, like if I had gone. So, and then slowly, I start having more and more energy. I start sleeping less and less. My brain starts getting faster and faster, and it's kind of like a slow progression. So through the summer, I'm killing it. I'm doing well at my job. I got cast in a Shakespeare play down in the village, and so I'm going to rehearsals, going to work, and then my dating life skyrockets because meanwhile my libido's taking a boost, man, because that's what happens too. You get insanely horny. So I'm dating this girl, dating that girl, working, rehearsing. And then slowly, you know, after not sleeping, that's what really kicks it off. So it'd be like a week. You just start sleeping less and less. So at the end, I'd be sleeping 1-2 hour, maybe not at all. I'd take a 30-minute nap and I wake up completely refreshed, literally like I had slept 8. But all the other time, my brain just spirals so fast that, you know, I don't know how to describe it.
Did it scare you, or were you excited by it?
No, I was absolutely, I was thrilled by it, because from your perspective, you're like, I've just been gradually getting smarter and more energized and stronger. Literally every facet of your life gets better. It's what they call hypomanic. It's not manic, it's hypo, where you're at that heightened state and you can do anything, right? And you're still sane. You're not having any delusions yet. And so, yeah, I'm just a top functioning human being. I don't feel bad saying it. Because it was true. When you're at that point, you just function higher than everyone around you, and you look back, it's like, oh, I never used to be this way. So, and like so for me, like the only rational conclusion, and this is at the breaking point when the delusions start, is like the only rational conclusion is that I've got to be like some genetic freak who's like God, who's like a godlike figure among men, like, and it's true, because you can like think you can have 4 or 5 lines of thought going in your head at the same time while dealing with outside reality.
So your brain is just in hyper.
Exactly.
Just to stop for a second, I do find this aspect incredibly fascinating, because there's so much about the brain.
Absolutely.
Brilliant neuroscientists are working around the clock to figure out this mechanism bonking around in our skull.
Yeah.
And they've barely scratched the surface. And I find it so fascinating to think of what it's capable of.
Yeah.
Just
very scary.
Yes. And then, what are we as a species capable of? And yet there seems to be this sort of systematic dumbing down of humans, and yet the capability is off the charts.
Absolutely.
And I just want to take a moment to sort of marvel at that. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now that we're in the 21st century with the big tech explosion and the science explosion, all those designer drugs that they already have that do that exact same thing, the genius pills.
Yeah, I'm sure they exist.
Oh, absolutely.
So you said that you were just now starting to have this God complex, or this feeling of a God among men.
And that's one of the...
That's a turning point?
That's just one of the textbook symptoms. Like, everyone who's manic and bipolar, they think there's some reincarnation of Jesus. That was the funny thing.
You have a bit of a Jesus look.
Oh, yeah.
You got the hair and the beard. And
yeah, it is. It's more of a hippie stoner look, but
well, I mean,
I look like Jesus naturally, so. What was I saying?
You were talking about you were starting to have the complex of.
Oh yeah, and then later on when I was in the psych ward, it's the funniest shit, because you're in there with 15 other people going through the exact same thing, so you're all like, I'm Jesus, no, I'm Jesus, and then everyone's like, all the rest of you are idiots, I'm the real Jesus. So
before we get to the psych ward, it's great. Tell me, I mean, it's not great, obviously.
You're like, go back.
But I don't want to skip anything, because I think for people that don't know, it's important to hear this progression.
Exactly. Yeah. So you start thinking, you're this, you're that, and then it's all the typical schizophrenic shit you normally. So you eventually think oh, that guy's looking at me. He must know that I'm a super genius, right? That was the shorthand. I was like, I'm a super genius, when I explained it to other people what was happening, which I never did, because that would break my cover, right? So someone looks at you funny, and you're like...
So the paranoia starts.
Yeah. It's like, why are you looking at me?
Were you dating at this time as well?
Oh, yeah.
How is it affecting your relationships?
Again, all this... when it starts, there's no way you're gonna tell anyone about it.
It's contained.
Yeah, it's contained. Absolutely.
But nobody red flagged and said, "Hey, you're."
Not until the end.
Okay, got it.
Not until I really started. Not until my delusions had literally taken over my entire.
So let's get to that. That's how fast was that progression from that guy's looking at me, he's on to me, to full on?
Months. Yeah, and just over time, I'd start hearing messages from the TV and radio. And,
what were they saying? Do you remember?
Anything from, just random stupid shit. I'd see something and oh, I've got to write this guy because that told me to do that, and then he'll do something else. I was convinced all these intelligence agencies were trying to reach out to me and tell me shit and tell me things I had to do and people I had to see.
I think it's interesting too that that's a common thread amongst people that are dealing with these what do you?
Yeah. Well, to me, I'm
trying to think of the word. What do you call this? A state of some sort,
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? That it's always CIA or FBI or?
Well, because it's just a natural thought that anyone would have. Who would be experimenting with shit like me, or who would find this shit valuable? Obviously, the government.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it has its logic.
Yeah.
It's not completely.
And that's insane. The thing is, when you go through this state, it's not it's not like drugs or alcohol where you can like become a different person and shut off parts of your brain. You're completely sober the whole time. You don't stop being you. It's just you are you compounded by whatever.
Was there a voice of reason in the middle of all of that?
Yeah, and it just slowly went away. And that's the difference between being like hypomanic or on the edge and just totally nuts, is that eventually that reason goes away. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but literally what was keeping me together, I'd be jacked up. I wasn't telling anybody. And at the same time, since it is bipolar, I'm having these insane swings in emotion. Like I'm feeling elated one second and then absolutely devastated the next, on top of everything else. So, yeah, I was burning mundo calories. I'm 165 now and I'm in very good shape. And I was like practically emaciated. I was 10 pounds less at the time because I wasn't sleeping or eating. I'm exercising.
The brain requires a lot of calories to work. So
when I wasn't exercising or working or dating or rehearsing for the show, I was following my delusion. Like I would be biking through Brooklyn with my phone off, trying to memorize all the streets, and I'd be sitting up hours and hours into the morning after rehearsal trying to decode the alphabet because I suddenly realized there was a secret language embedded just inherently in the English alphabet. So by the time I had to wake up, or by the time I should have woken up and go back to work, I'd have pages and pages of just alphabetical scribblings and messages that it was trying to tell me. So no one knew. Like I'd pack it all in when I was at rehearsal or work or with friends. And
how in the world were you able to do Shakespeare like this?
Like I said, I mean,
your brain was just functioning at such a.
You are having all these crazy thoughts, but you are functioning at that level where you're able to handle it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The beautiful mind.
Exactly.
Things are going from bad to worse.
Things are going from bad to worse. So I do 2 Shakespeare shows in a row, which took up 6 months probably. And that brought us to the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And as you can imagine, like the night of the cast party, when the second show wrapped, you can imagine how, I mean, you can be a normal person, have a great experience, and then when it's over, you can be feeling like absolute shit. So literally doing those shows were the only thing keeping me together. And the second I didn't have like that structured time preparing and doing a play, that was just that much more time for me to hear messages in the TV and go absolutely fucking bananas. And yeah, so the second it ended, I went absolutely bananas. I was like, the CIA's gotta have me now. And I had this, and it was sexual too, because I was so fucking jacked up. So there's all the things to deal with on the day-to-day, like that guy wants to kill me, I have to follow this guy, and then there's the second where it's like, oh, I have to hook up with her, and there's these one of the overarching delusions was that because I was a super genius, it was my duty, like I felt almost, I'm an atheist, but it would have been like a directive from God. It's like I have to spread my seed and make other geniuses like me. And because histories and stuff in my head, I was like, and I can't be a part of my children's lives because my father wasn't around. And I thought that somehow had something to do with, the melting pot of whatever made.
Were you considering consensual sexual experiences, or does your brain start violence?
No, never violence. See, again, I'm not a violent person. You stay you. When you go crazy, you stay you. And even, this is how, like, funny and crazy, like, I'd have these existential breakdowns in my room because, I want kids and I don't want to impregnate a woman and then leave her on purpose. That's something a complete sociopath would do. So I'd be like struggling. It's like, I don't want to, but I have to. It's like, no, you don't have to, but I had to. So I'd be having, and thank God I didn't. Thank God because as much as I wanted to, any woman who'd spend more than a date with me would soon realize, like, this guy's absolutely bonkers and get the hell away. Thank God, And then at the same time...
Is your mother the doctor noticing a difference? Are you reporting back to her?
I wasn't at home.
I know, but like the normal mother-son conversations that you have.
I mean, near the very end, she got tipped out because it started coming across in my emails. I'd be like, Mom, blah, 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 and start spouting off. She's like, Sean, what are you talking about? So eventually it got to that point. I've had run-ins with drug dealers in Bed-Stuy where I had been living at the time. I have this one crazy experiences. So I'm biking all over Brooklyn, and everywhere I go in my hood, I'm making a scene. And another one of my overarching delusions was was that a race war was like going to be popping off like any minute, and and even seeing. Like being brought up in Vermont with white people and
black people,
yeah exactly.
It's a very white place.
I knew America was racist and all that. Like I had been taught about inequality, but you don't see it firsthand until you see it firsthand. And being in an ultra emotional and I'm not trying to be a white savior, but I was like, I felt the pain around me, and I was like, it is not right. So that was another one of my crazy crusades. I thought the race war was like about to pop off, and this is the crazy funny ass part about it. I thought, so obviously there's an underground black revolution taking place. I thought the low-key leader was like Beyonce and Jay-Z, because I just happened to be...
I mean, that's a good call.
Like, who else would it be? Is like, who are the other powerful black people that might...
Yeah.
It's like...
I feel like they're being pretty open about it.
Yeah, exactly. All that Illuminati shit. And so they're talking with Obama, and they're trying to recruit me, and...
recruit you to help.
Exactly. And
at least you're on the right side in your delusion.
Exactly. So and I'm going out in like deep hooded areas and going out playing handball every day with whoever I can find, and there were an extraordinary amount of like confrontational things like, what are you doing at our park playing with us? And I didn't know how to play handball. I soon learned. I picked it up really fast, being very fucking manic, and just every time I went there'd be some kind of altercation, like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I'd be honest, I'd be like, I'm trying to make friends. I'm just trying to make friends. And I know for a fact I definitely had a police detail on me at some point.
For real or in your mind?
No, for real.
Okay.
For real.
You were on a watch of some sort.
I was on a watch of some sort because I was doing all sorts of crazy shit, like late night on the trains, and I was...
Do you still have all your writings that you did?
No. No. But here's the thing: is like when you're when all of the process is in your mind, you scribble something here and you do something there, and then now if you'd look back on it, you'd be like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever like seen, just because it doesn't make sense, you know.
What was your breaking point to get you into help?
To get me into help. So I'm doing all this to get me into help. My breaking point was I saw some Peter Pan bus tour thing popped up on my computer. I was like, oh, I gotta go to the Boston to meet the CIA. So I clicked on the link and I bought bus tickets to Boston, the city. Wait, of course the city. It's in Mass. All right. So I hop on a bus to Boston, and by this point I had written some pretty scary shit to my parents, and my roommates were definitely all clued in. My best friend from home, who was also in New York, he still is, but he was also clued in. And
they had tried to say something to you, and you just put it off, or
they hadn't tried to say anything. They're just noticing, like, holy shit, something desperately wrong is happening. So I had written some insane thing to my mother the early morning before, probably just like 3 hours before, and by the time she read it, I was already on a bus. So she calls my roommates, like, is Sean okay? No, he's not home. He's acting really scary. Can you please try to find out where he is? And luckily, I hadn't closed out the browser, and they're like, we think he's going to Boston. Because they found the train receipt, like, open in my email. Because literally, I bought the ticket, packed some shit, and jetted. I was ready to leave my entire life behind, go overseas. Literally, it's lucky I went because... Oh, shit. Yeah, because I went to Boston. I get to Boston, I see some dude who has like red shoes on, and I'm like, oh my god, red
Tom
shoes.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, red. Yeah, exactly.
The man with one red shoe.
Red shoes. I gotta follow him, so I follow him to this club. I have a few drinks. I flirt with some women, and then I get back to stalking this guy. Eventually, I see something. Eventually, another secret agent, who is just obviously some random dude, he tells me that I got to go to the airport. There was a really split second where I was on a bus headed to the airport, about to fly out to fucking Arkansas, where my uncle was living at the time. So it's luckily I didn't board a plane or nothing. I stayed East Coast. Then eventually I saw another message like, no, it's not the airport. You got to go back to the station. I bought another ticket to Reedsville, Massachusetts. I don't know why, but for some reason it had to be Reedsville. So now I'm on a train to Reedsville. Meanwhile, my parents had contacted an old girlfriend of mine who lived in Boston, who I had contacted, and she had like reached out to my parents being like, is Sean all right? So they were like, Sean's in Boston, we think he might have come to see you. And she's like, no, I haven't been in touch. But luckily she worked in some kind of mental health services, so she was able to coordinate the police in she was able to coordinate a search with the authorities to go to the station and try to intercept me. Didn't happen. I'm on the train to Reedsville. Get to Reedsville. It's like middle of February.
Brr.
Yeah. Or actually, this might have been before New Year's, but yeah, December. I was in a tank top. I was just jacked up. I get out in Reedsville, and I'm trying to find, someone to take me in, because obviously I haven't found
the agent
who I was supposed to meet. So, and like, no one's taking me in. Obviously, no one's gonna open their doors to a complete stranger knocking at their door at 3 a.m. I think they tracked my credit card at that point, so they knew I had bought a ticket there. I head back to the train station, and just as I get back to the train station, the cop cars come, and they're like, "Are you Sean Fitzharris?" Like, "Yes, you come with us." And I'm like, "Thank God." Well, first of all, I'm not like, "Thank God." I'm like, "Fuck, the police got me." Because, Black Revolution, pigs are bad. So at this point, I'm in the cop car, and I gotta cool it. I was like, "Oh, I know the cops are here, gotta act totally sane. Hey guys, how's your night?" Pleasantries. They bring me to the hospital. Gotta act cool for the doctors. "Oh yeah, no, just trip to Boston, on a whim." "Yeah, just on a whim."
In a tank top?
In a tank top in the middle of December, knocking on random people's doors.
As you do.
As you do normally. So they get me in the hospital because they can't take me to jail, right? And now I get mixed up. During this time because there were 2 separate occasions where I was picked up by police and brought into hospitals. There was the first time. Yeah, the first time. So this must have been, this was in Boston, in Brigham Women's. It's a big old hospital.
So they get you in Reed's.
They get me in Reedsville. They bring me back to Metro.
Got it. And then get you into the hospital.
Get me into the hospital, and I'm immediately put into the psych ward. Well, not immediately. What happened was they can't charge me with anything, so I'm in the hospital, and as soon as I realize they won't let me leave, the cops are gone, and I can't leave the hospital still. So that's when I start freaking out again, and they realize something's wrong. They put me in the psych ward. I spend 3-4 days there, and while I'm there, I'm just like, I'm getting to know the other crazy people, and I'm getting in their heads, and because it's all messaging, like I have to talk to this guy, talk to that guy, sit here for 3 hours because they're watching me constantly, and if I do the right things, I'll like crack the test and break through, and then they'll take me to the secret room and induct me. Yeah, so doing my thing. Meanwhile, every time the doctor comes in, "How you doing, Sean?" "Oh yeah, I just want to get out of here, man, total misunderstanding." "Nothing out of the ordinary. You having any thoughts?" "Nah, of course not, man. I'm just trying to get back to work. I tied one on, So for 2-3 days I was there. I'm totally fooling everybody. So literally by the time the police can contact my parents, because again, they don't know who I am at this point, because a side note, so my full name is Sean Samuel Fitzharris, my mother's last name, Weimersheimer, my father's last name, and then Onion, my adoptive father's last name. So at the time I have all these names, and of course being a cocky kid, I was like, I'll put one of my, I go by Fitzharris, so like I'll put Weimersheimer on my driver's license just to fuck with people. But of course they can't look me up if they don't have the right name on my license. It was a big priority for my parents getting my name squared away on all my documentation after this happened. Yeah. So by the time my parents are notified about where I am and where to find me in this hospital, I have already been cleared and released by the doctor. So they come to the hospital, they meet me. It's like, "Okay, Sean, please, can you come home with us?" "Nope, back to New York." They're like pleading with me. My best friend was there too. It's like, "Sean," and they had even agreed, like, if you go back to New York with Cario, that's his name, you can go back to New York and we'll figure out what to do from there. So I'm literally on the train platform about to leave with Cario. I see another message. "Oh, sorry, Car, can't come with you. Gotta go to DC. "Sean, please don't go to DC. Come back with me." "Nope, going to DC. Farewell, brother. off on another train. Of course, I never make it to DC in the other train station. I meet this girl who I assume is another agent, so I follow her to a track, and I find myself on a train, and I get off in Providence, Rhode Island, actually. And Providence, Rhode Island is the second time they pick me up. Again, oh my god, it's a fucking saga. And then again, I get to Providence at like midnight, 3 a.m. or however late it is. See a guy with a orange hoodie. Oh, orange is Ryan's favorite color. That must be the guy I gotta follow. Follow him into a bar, into a back alley, into this pretty, not seedy, ghetto part of Rhode Island. And I see this retirement center, and to me, old people are like, one of my delusions, old people are like, they're like the trees, they're the keepers of the knowledge, and
I think that's pretty accurate.
They're who you go to. Yeah. So I find my way. I was like, there's this person. I'm specifically looking for an old black lady, which would fit the neighborhood. And she is like the old tree of the revolution. And if I can find her and talk to her, I will know what to do next and what my piece is in this whole. So I'm totally jacked up. I go into the hospital, and I immediately say, big old smile on my face, "Hey, I'm here for my visit." "Oh, are they expecting you?" "Oh, yeah." "Oh, well, go on up." And it's like, these people led a total... But luckily, luckily someone had the common sense mid-elevator ride up. They stopped the elevator.
Oh my God.
I was like, I don't know what I would have done. If I got up there, I'd be like talking, and honestly, I would have done nothing. I would have been literally talking to everyone in there, having a great time. But they bring me back down, and sorry, who are you here to see? I want to say her name is Gladys. Gladys? No, sorry, we don't have a Gladys here. Maybe Caroline. And then at this point, "Sir, you gotta leave. Security has got to escort me out." I was like, okay. Acting really skeevy at this point, and I'm stalking outside the building. I call my mom, or my mom calls me rather. I was like, "Mom, I can't talk now. Sean, where are you?" "It doesn't matter." It's like, "Yes, it does matter, Sean, where are you?" "Fine, Mom, I'm in Providence." Like, "Providence? Okay, we gotta get the fuck to Providence." It's like, meanwhile, my dad's on his way to Boston.
Your stepdad?
My stepdad.
Yeah.
They're like, "Matthew, we don't know where he is." Well, he was in Boston last, so just on a whim. Yeah. He doesn't even know if I'm going to be there. He just knows that he's got to go to Boston and try to find me. So my dad's heading there. I tell my mom, I let it leak that I'm in Providence. She calls him. It's like, "He's not in Boston. He's in Providence." He's already halfway to it. It's like, oh, god damn. So he's got to like make a U-ey, and now he's on his way to Providence. Again, they take me to the hospital because it's not like I've done anything wrong. You can't arrest a person for trying to visit someone in a nursing home.
I wish more people would do it.
Yeah.
They need to be visited.
Man, when I was delusional, I was because I had like the Messiah complex. I was like, every life is sacred, and not sacred, but valuable.
Yeah, I think that's fair too.
Exactly, fair enough. So they get me to the hospital. I'm running amok in the hospital. They get me into the psych ward there, and my parents are there. It's like, okay, fine. He's in the psych ward. Now we legit have you. Now we start the process of bringing you down. I remember, like, my hospital stories are insane too. In Providence, they literally had to hire an outside security service to watch me while I was there because I was too much to handle for the regular security people that were on duty. So they had to like go into...
You mean too strong? Too what? Too much to handle?
Too crazy. Too like... And I was strong too. Like not only... I was
You were like James McAvoy and...
I was absolutely jacked.
Yeah.
There's nothing out... Because I was...
His character, not him himself.
I was also...
You know that movie?
James McAvoy.
Split, when he's...
Split, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Superhuman.
Not to go into too much detail because I'm not trying to make it hot for people I know, but I was also training to be, the secret. I was training to be what I was in my head.
So you were strong and delusional.
Yeah. And absolutely off the walls, energetic. So yeah,
And how long did that stay last?
Until... It depends, because I'd be calm with friends, but if I was in a...
But in the institution or the hospital?
In the hospital. Gee, I had to spend a solid month in the hospital absolutely raving music because I wouldn't take the pills once I was in the hospital. I was very, very close to being involuntarily committed, which would have stayed on my permanent record. So thank God the very understanding second doctor, not the fucking first doctor who let me go, but the second doctor who actually had a lot of patience for me and was able to finally convince me to take the medication.
Can we say your doctor's name? Shout out?
Oh yeah, shout out to my wonderful doctor, Dr. Wu.
Dr. Wu.
In Providence.
Thanks, Dr. Wu.
Yeah.
Then, while you were in there, before they got the meds, you were like, let me out, I've got a job to do.
Yeah, exactly. Before the meds, I was like letting me out, and I was literally wreaking havoc with the other mental patients, like turning them against each other because...
You were Jack Nicholson.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. We're getting a lot of movie references, so people can follow.
Yeah.
When the medicine starts to kick in, how is that?
Well, when it kicks in, what happens is, like, once I agreed to take the medicine, they just pumped me up. They pumped me up full of lithium. It's like, okay, we'll give him the 600 milligram. Did that do anything? No, he's still a raving lunatic. Okay, we'll pump the lithium up to 1,000, then 2,000, 3,000. They just kept dosing me until eventually they got me down. They get me to actually sleep. And so the first few days...
God, you were a superhero.
Exactly. So the first few days, I'm just knocked out. And then after I come to, I'm like, for a week. Then finally, like, after a week, the doctors and my parents come in. They're like, Sean, you have bipolar disorder. And you're in a psych ward and you have to start taking these medications now. And you're going to be taking these medications for the rest of your life. And just, I remember being there with the doctors and my parents, like, finally being kind of like sane enough and normal enough to understand actually what's going on. And, it hits me. And that's when you go from being like, yeah, it's literally a superhero. Absolute best fucking time of my entire life. And then after comes the absolute worst time of my entire life is when you're just pumped full of all these drugs. At this point, I'm a good 30, 40 pounds overweight because now because one of my delusions in the hospital was that I got to become an NFL superstar. So I was eating constantly when I was in the hospital, packing on weight. So now and then the lithium and then the sleeping, and I was also on Seroquel, which also gets you kind of heavy too. So now you go from being this megastar savior of the planet to being a worthless, fat, mentally unstable piece of shit. And that is just the most awful transition you could probably go through. and then, you know, after that, it's just misery. And I'm at home, and all I'm thinking at home while I'm on these meds that are just like clouding my head is like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get back to New York. And so there was a time. So then it goes into the almost saga, which is I could have easily swung, because before I was ready, before I was feeling 100%, like, yeah, I was down. I was on constant medication, but they weren't right for me. I was still very depressed. I was holding a job back in bumfuck Vermont, New Hampshire, but the second I got back to the city, I couldn't be a waiter in like a high volume restaurant. I just didn't have the skills. I was too sedated. So it wasn't going good in New York. Didn't have a job. I wasn't doing it. I was sleeping all day. So eventually I was like, I gotta stop this. And you know, you just think, you know, life was so great before. It's like, maybe, you know, maybe they got it wrong. Maybe if I go off my meds, I'll just feel better, you know, like maybe it was a one-time thing. And so, yeah, I do. I go off my meds and same thing happens. I start feeling better, but that's the thing, is like, it's not a slow, gradual progression like it was the first time. Like once you break the seal, you break the seal. Within 3 weeks, I was going off the rails again.
And you were spending money and stuff, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah. My initial break, I spent so much. I blew through all my savings. I had maxed out, near maxed out credit cards. Thank God my parents, my mom being a doctor, being the very smart, awesome doctor she is, had some money. She could help me out, because I mean, and it just leads us back to the thing we were talking about. It's like, if this wasn't happening to a middle-class white kid, if this had been happening to literally one of my neighbors in Bed-Stuy, he'd be a lunatic on the streets by now.
Or dead.
Dead. I could have been dead.
Yeah.
I could have.
It is a very important thing to say.
Yeah, I could have put my life in peril almost every.
Just a sidestep, when you do see people like that on the streets, how does that? I mean, do you see your own face there? Knowing that, I mean, just by the grace of the family you were born into.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I definitely don't feel any animosity towards any of them. And being in that situation, like, I know I wouldn't have hurt a fly, so.
Yeah, it just depended on the personality.
Yeah, exactly. So most of these people you see that you're scared of, that are homeless, and there's really no reason to be scared of them, you know.
That's a good message too, I think.
Yeah.
Even the ones that are saying all sorts of weird things.
Yeah, exactly.
So you went off, you decided to take yourself off?
I took myself off the meds. Thank God my parents had scheduled this enormous trip to Africa that I was going to go with them with. They won it in like some auction. So they had been planning this thing for months. So I was set to go with them. So it luckily happened that, like, really just as I was about to totally lose control again, I had to meet my parents to go on this vacation. And of course, when I was with my parents, they made sure I was medicated. It was still rough though. I barely made it.
So they got you back on, you mean?
They got me back on.
Did you stay on?
But they got me on in the process while I was in Africa. So while I'm seeing like the African savanna and elephants and all this crazy wildlife, I'm also, you know, back in my head, I thought some other New Yorkers that we were on the trip with, I thought they were connected to the mob. And I thought, and only because I had some good sense to keep a low key, if I had been crazy in Africa, I would definitely not have made it back from Africa if I had went crazy over there. I definitely would be goner off the face of the earth. But because I was slowly back on the meds. Over the trip, I slowly got. It came back. Yeah.
How long did it take to get you on the right mix of things? Because I think that's something else that people go on the medicine and it's not working, or they don't feel good or whatever, and they go off. But I think it does take time to figure out each individual body chemistry and brain chemistry.
Yeah. So
there's no perfect solution right away.
So my parents saw the signs. We get back from Africa. They're like, Sean, you're not going back to New York. You're staying here, and we have to get you right. We have to get you 100% right before you do anything else. And finally I was like, I was getting out of control. And that second time, like, fool me once, fool me twice is like, okay, I know I gotta get better. And so that whole process before for me, it could be longer. I mean, and this is different for everybody, depending on how many times you get frustrated or get up. Like, every time you relapse, you got to start from scratch, basically. So to get the whole thing done to a point where I was doing what I was doing back in New York, I was in a job, I was in a show, I was dating someone, to get like all those facets of my life back on track took me a full 2 years. Because when you're on these medications, they don't work right away, and so you're in this phase and you're feeling miserable. I worked in a warehouse for those 2 years that I was recovering, and when I first started at the warehouse, the first year of the warehouse, I didn't talk to anybody. I was just miserable. I was like I was working, like, what is my life like if I'm not a secret agent meant for some kind of, if I'm not meant for this higher purpose, then what the fuck am I doing on this planet? So they give you one medication and then it takes like a month for it to kick in. So you gotta wait the month, and then, how do you feel? Still shitty. Okay, then we either up the dose or take some of this away, and then you can only do one thing at a time, right? Can't do multiple things at a time, or you don't know what's working. So it's like that month this, and this month that, and this month after month after month after month, that you just have to slowly get better.
And how long have you been episode free?
I mean, after my second almost relapse, that was it. I've been perfectly fine ever since. Thank God I'm one of those people. It's like, once I know I got to do something, I'll just do it.
Yeah. And you haven't had any inclination to go off?
No, I have a zero inclination. Now that I've got my life back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because
I think it's too, when we had dinner and you sort of just said it, and I thought, you know what, that's awesome, because a lot of people, I'm sure there's a lot of shame around this.
I had so much shame.
Yeah.
So much.
So good on you for being like, you know what, this is who I am. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really brave and cool.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And to no fault of your own, just the way you were wired, and maybe having an older father, because they say that the older the dad is, right, the higher instance of mental illness. Yeah. So who knows?
Yeah. But it's good talking about it over, because I saw a very, very, like, best friend of mine recently who I hadn't contacted even before I started going crazy. And then once I like, she had been like up to date with everything that was happening at the time, but I was again so ashamed that I didn't reach out until, she lives on the West Coast, so once I was out here and established, we finally got a chance to see each other again. And I basically went through this whole spiel with her, and every time I do it, I remember it, more and more details. So it's helpful, because I'm trying to write very unsuccessfully, a screenplay based on all this shit.
Good. So, I hope you do.
Yeah.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
I'll put links on the links page for people that if they know someone, or maybe they themselves are going through something, they can get some references. And
yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Sean, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your story. Me. Yeah, absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you.